you got to clarify the audience. Here's the bottom line. You got to be known for something with a specific group of people. So who is the audience you want to serve? You got to have that problem to solve, your solution to that problem. You need to clarify those things. And you just got to get on stage. I don't care how you do it. Get over the fact that maybe you're going to have to do some free gigs. Everybody's got to do a lot of free gigs in the beginning. That's the cost of doing business.
Hey, what's up, friends? Grant Baldwin here. Welcome back to the Speaker Lab podcast. Excited for today's conversation with my good friend and yours, Mr. Erick Rheam, who has been on the show like a billion times at this point. We've got like 550, 560 some episodes, and somehow he's managed to be on like basically all of them in one way or another. So, Erick, always good to have you here today. How are you, my friend?
Grant, I'm doing fantastic. I was on the speaker trail last few weeks. I got a chance to go to Nashville. Unfortunately, you were on one of your many trips, so I was unable to hook up with you, but I spent some time in Nashville, which was fantastic. And then from there, I went to D.C. That was fun. I was able to have a nice dinner right next to the White House. It was kind of cool. Nice. I could feel the power. It was fantastic. And then in a few weeks, I'm heading out to Missoula, Montana. Have you been to Missoula before?
I've been to Montana. I'm trying to remember if I've been to Missoula. It's possible, maybe.
Yeah, I'm heading out to there, and then after that, I'm going to Bismarck, North Dakota, because who doesn't want to go there? This guy, I want to go there. So I'm going to go hang out and collect a check and add value while I'm there. And then I'm going to hang out with you in Dallas, which I'm looking forward to connecting with you. So how are you doing, Grant?
Ironically, I've actually spoken Bismarck a lot. I would say probably close to 10 times.
Yeah, so you know.
Yeah, there's not much there. Do you know what the building is you're speaking at, or the hotel?
It's not a hotel. It's at a headquarters utility. So probably haven't spoken there before, but that's where I'm going.
There's one conference center in town, and it's the Ramkota. I do remember that.
Yes, so, I know Ramkota very well. There's Ramkota all over that area. So I've been a lot of Ramkotas. I actually have a frequent what do you call that? A frequent program at Ramkota. I love that place. It's awesome. There's always a nice fireplace in the main area there. It's awesome.
Living the dream. All right. Perfect. All right. If you've ever spoken Bismarck, you've probably spoken the Ramkota, but we digress. All right. Today, we're going to be talking about basically the 5 levels of a professional speaker lifestyle, of building a speaking business. And this is something as we're kind of thinking through, like there are different levels that you kind of go through. And what's interesting is like not every speaker will go through all of these, and it'll be interesting to kind of look at these. We're going to talk about the kind of what the lifestyle looks like, where maybe your mindset might be at each of these places, maybe the obstacles that you're running into, what you need to be doing to get to the next level. And then also for you to kind of think through for yourself where you are and what you need to be doing to move through these. So just to start with, kind of give you an overview, we have the level 1, the aspiring speaker, level 2, the amateur speaker, level 3, the professional speaker, level 4, the career speaker, and level 5, the legacy speaker. Now, those 5 things mean nothing to you at this point, but again, we're going to dig in and explain what each of those mean, and you think through where are you on this game, so to speak, and what do you need to do to get to the next level. So, Erick, anything else there we need to hit?
Well, it's interesting if you think about being a speaker, Grant, because you've been in it for a long time. But if you take yourself back to when you first started, it's a unique lifestyle, right? I mean, think as you're listening in, how many of you know a professional speaker in your family, personally? It's just not something you talk about at Thanksgiving. It's a unique lifestyle. It's an interesting lifestyle. It's a fun lifestyle. But if not managed correctly, it could be a short-term gain for you. And for those of you that are really interested in the speaking life, this is going to inspire you, but it's also going to give you some tangible things to think about if you really want to go on this journey and what to expect. So this is going to be a fun session.
Now, let's start by talking about the first level. Level 1 is, again, what we refer to as the aspiring speaker. So someone who has the desire to build a speaking business, but maybe lacks the clarity, confidence to build a proper business. So why don't you elaborate, like, first of all, like, what does that exactly look like when we're talking about the aspiring speaker?
Well, I'll tell you what this looks like, Grant. This looks like, hey, Grant, you're a good speaker, man. Have you ever thought about doing this full time? Man, you're really good at this. You're so impactful. Man, you should be doing this all the time. You're a really good speaker, Grant. So people have been telling you that you're a good speaker, and you've heard it, and you know you're a communicator. So you're like, maybe this is something. Maybe this is something I want to do. This is the lifestyle at this standpoint, Grant, is kind of exciting. It's kind of exciting to think about, wow, I can get on stage. In fact, people that are listening to this, you know what I'm about to say. We've all experienced this. You're at a conference, you're listening to a speaker, like, I could do better than that guy. I could, if that lady could do it, I could definitely do it. And in your mind, you're thinking about how you could have delivered it in a better way. That's what that looks like. So it's exciting to think about what that could look like. You getting on stage, you delivering a message, you talking about your story. Everything is new, right? It's all new and all shiny. It's kind of fun. But then it gets frustrating. It gets confusing. You have a lot of false starts. Like people say at a conference, man, you'd be really good at this, but they don't return your calls, right? You send emails to the people said, hey, you should contact me sometime. We'd love to work with you. And they're not returning your emails. Like, what do I do? And anybody that does want to work with you, they're always saying the same thing. Well, we don't have a budget. Well, you could come and speak, but we're not going to pay anything. Yeah. And it doesn't seem like anybody trusts you. And it doesn't seem like anybody's taking you seriously. So it's one thing for someone to say you're a really good speaker. It's another thing to translate that now to something that's actually meaningful where you can work with. So that's kind of what it feels like in the beginning as an aspiring speaker.
Yeah, one of the things we talk a lot about, on the podcast and with our students is the difference between being a steakhouse and a buffet. And, the buffet is the thing that most speakers are, where, at this point where we talk about, who do you speak to? What problem do you solve? Like, I speak to humans about anything and everything. What do you want me to talk about? And who do you want me to talk to? I'm in. Because again, like you referred to, we're just excited. We just looking for an at-bat. We're looking for an opportunity to speak. And it doesn't matter who we speak to or what we speak about. We just want to speak. And so that means is like, you're just throwing the net out for any and every opportunity that you can. Like you said, your eyes are you're wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, which is okay. Some energy and some excitement there, but if you don't start to narrow that down, it's really, really hard to start to build some momentum and eventually move to different levels in the along the pathway here.
Yeah, that's awesome. On a side note, Grant, just to let you know, I've had 3 cups of coffee, so buyer beware. All right, if I'm talking a little quick today,
it's good
because I'm overly caffeinated, man. I've had too much sugar.
I've had people tell me, like, when I listen to a podcast, I'm usually listening at 1.5, 2 times speed. And I have had people tell me they do the same thing, but they don't do that when I'm on the podcast because I already talk too fast. So, hey, that's good. If you're already listening at 1.5, 2 times speed,
I'm at your level now.
Bring it to 1x. We'll speed it up for you. No need to do anything for you on your side. So first of all, like, how do you get past this level? If we know, like, I just want to speak, I'm excited, woohoo, let's go. At some point, we got to do something and have some intentionality to move past this. What do we need to do?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some obstacles that are common here. What are people facing when they're aspiring speakers? Well, a lot of times you're an aspiring speaker, meaning that you've got maybe success. You've achieved high-level success and you want to teach people that, or maybe you have a really unique story that you want to bring to the audience, and that's your problem. The problem is that you have a message, you have a story with no problem or no audience that needs it right now. So what you got to do is you got to flip it, and you got to get clarity on who do you really want to speak to. This is the number one thing that aspiring speakers have to overcome. We do this for a living, Grant, you and I and the Speaker Lab. This is the number one thing we have to help speakers get through. Yeah, you have a good story, but that doesn't mean anything unless you have an audience that's interested in it. So you got to get clarity on the audience and what the problem is that you're going to help them solve and how your story will help solve it. That's number one. The other thing people struggle with at this stage is they just don't have a system, man. There's just no system. They don't know really what steps to take. They don't even know where to begin a lot of times. And they don't know what to do with someone that actually responds to them. How do you close a deal to get on stage? How do you even broach the subject of payment, right? A lot of people just don't know what to do, and they're too general in their approach. So what do you do to clear this level? Well, first of all, this is going to be a common theme, the first one, and that is you got to get coaching. Grant, I have coaching. In fact, you're one of my coaches. And when we hang out together in June, we're going to have breakfast together, and I'm going to get some coaching from you. I'm going to throw out some ideas and see what your thoughts are. So every level, you need to have someone that's walk alongside you. Listen, if you're doing this by yourself, that's a mistake. Every person that's done anything of success in any level in any industry needs some level of coaching. So you got to find someone who's a little bit ahead of you that can help you clear some of these obstacles, helping you identify your audience, things like that. You got to clarify the audience. Here's the bottom line. You got to be known for something with a specific group of people. So who is the audience you want to serve? You got to have that problem to solve, your solution to that problem. You need to clarify those things. And you just got to get on stage. I don't care how you do it. Get over the fact that maybe you're going to have to do some free gigs. Everybody's got to do a lot of free gigs in the beginning. That's the cost of doing business. I need you to get on stage, because when you get on stage, that's how you sharpen your message. It's one thing to take batting practice, Grant. It's another thing to take live pitching. You got to get that live pitching. You got to get on stage to practice, to sharpen your message, and to build that momentum.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially on that last point of early on. The way that you get better as a speaker is you speak, and that's no different than anything else. The way that you get better as a writer is you write. The way you get better as a podcaster is you podcast. And so you're exactly right. It's one thing to stand in front of your bedroom mirror and pretend hold a pencil and pretend like you're speaking in a microphone giving a speech. It's another thing to stand in front of an audience and like that. There's no safety net. You're on the tightrope there. You're doing the thing, and so the way that you get better is that you just do those reps, even if they're free reps, because it helps you to build some more of that experience there. So, all right, that's the aspiring speaker. And I would say like one of the ways to clear this aspiring level is to focus on getting one paid gig. Focus on getting one paid gig, because I found that it starts to build some confidence. It's like pushing a domino over of just like, oh, okay, I can do this. All of a sudden, I feel like what felt like this insurmountable thing or this unrealistic goal of being a paid speaker, all of a sudden feels like, oh, this light bulb switch flips and I can actually make this happen. So getting past that aspiring speaker level is, again, focusing on booking one paid gig. All right, let's keep moving on here. Number 2, the amateur speaker. We would define the amateur speaker as like, all right, you've got kind of a working message. You have an idea of who you speak to, what you speak about. Maybe it's a little rough around the edges, but it's a bit more narrowed down. You have the ability to get paid gigs. Again, maybe you're starting to book a couple of paid things here and there. Maybe it's much more random and reactive. Someone's reaching out to you. Hey, can you come speak to this thing? We got, $500 or $1,000. So you're getting there, but you're not clear on how do you build momentum? How do you start to sustain the business there? And so it becomes much less reactive and going, well, now I just sit back and I wait for the phone to ring, which is a horrible strategy. But how do you become much more proactive here in building this? So talk to us a little bit, Eric, about like what does it look like to be at the stage and what are the potential obstacles that a speaker may run into?
That's awesome. Well, let's talk about the lifestyle. What's a lifestyle of an amateur speaker look like? Well, first of all, relief, right? Because you got paid, Grant.
Yeah.
You're in your mind, you're thinking, I can do this. But when you get someone to finally pay you for the first time, it blows your mind. Remember the first time you got paid, how great that felt?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. It's validating, isn't it? It's like, okay, I said I can do this, but now I have somebody that actually paid me. I remember the first time someone said, how much do you charge? And I didn't know what to say. So I just said $1,000. And I said, sounds good. I'm like, holy cow. I'm a speaker. It worked. And so it's really validating. There's this big sigh of relief. Okay, I'm not out on a ledge here. At least I've got something. Now, the bad part about it is you got these really high moments when you're on stage and you're actually delivering like, okay, I'm doing it. But then it's followed by a big low, like, okay, but nobody's returning my calls. What now? I have nothing else. I'd had this one gig. Now what happens? So you got your high highs and your low lows. It's just up and down. But it's also a time of extreme creativity because it really, once you get paid, it starts getting the juices going. Okay, how can I make this talk a little bit better? What other talks can I do? You get a lot of extreme creativity during that time. It's really a creative time. It's a fun time. It's an exciting time. But there's also some obstacles that really hit you hard. Number one is there's just external variables that can easily derail you, things outside of your control. Like, man, things are going great. Oh, no, the economy has a downturn and people are cutting back. And now maybe you had an event coming up and it gets canceled. That's happened to me before. Or things are going great and suddenly you get sick. That's happened and you can't make the gig. So these external, or a plane gets canceled, or, there's just things outside of your control. And because you're still fragile in that moment, those things can really derail you in the beginning. So you have to kind of get through that. Exhaustion starts to head in, Grant, because for most people at this level, this is a side gig. They've got other things that they do to pay the bills, which means you're probably doing this in the margins of your life, which you can do for a while, but after a while you start getting a little tired. And this is where the family drama. All right, listen, you and I have been here, Grant. We can talk on authority here, right? Like, oh, really? You're going on our anniversary? Really? Okay. Your daughter's got a birthday on that day, right? Or, hey, we had the dog is sick. You mean I have to take the dog? And this actually happened to me, and have to put the dog down while you're at a gig? What's going on? And so your family, you haven't proven it yet. Your family's like, okay, you're doing this, but I'm not seeing the fruits of the labor here yet. Right. And so this is where tension can come in, and people can get skeptical, negative, and grumpy, and you have to work through that. And your paid gigs are very sporadic, and there's a lack of momentum. And so even though you got something, there's not enough there yet to say this is something legit. And the people that really depend on you, because for most people, we have somebody that depends on us, they're kind of looking at us side eyes like, oh, you're spending a lot of time on this, but I'm not seeing a lot here. So that's what a lot of people experience around this level.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with like the exhaustion side, because the way we've always kind of described it is like you're spinning one plate, which is your day job, and most people, they're doing some type of day job here that is required of them on a day in day out basis, just to eat and live indoors and to pay bills and make ends meet. And so you're doing that while at the same time, nights, weekends, mornings, any free moment that you can, you're trying to chase this dream. And you still have those, like you mentioned, you may do a gig and it's like, it's awesome, I can't believe it, they paid me $1,000, and you're on the high of that. But then it's like, I don't have anything else booked, the rest of the year. I have one other thing, but it's not for 4 months. And when can I experience this high again? And am I going to be able to book anything between now and then? Or was that the last gig that I will ever do? And so you have those like self doubts and worry of just like you're chasing this dream, but ultimately, like, you don't know necessarily. Like, none of us are guaranteed success. You don't know necessarily if this is going to work out. So like you said, you're trying to convince your family members and friends who are well-meaning, who love you, and you're trying to convince yourself, like, okay, I'm not delusional, I'm not crazy, I can actually do this. This is hard work. If this was easy, everybody would do it. So I got to keep, showing up and putting in the work on day in and day out basis. So how do we get past this level? What are the steps we need to take?
All right. Spoiler alert, get coaching. So at this level, you need to have someone that walks alongside you that's been through this. Number one, they understand what you're going through. They've been through it themselves. They can help you figure out how to create that momentum. So they can take some of the stuff you've done and give you some feedback and some tweaks to help you get to the next level. I can't tell you how that's just streamlined my entire business, Grant. That's one thing that I've been really good at, is making sure that I tap into people that are smarter than me, that can give me advice to get me to the next level. So number one, find someone you can walk alongside with. The next is the audience that's paying you, lean into that audience. You got to double down. You need to build a reputation with an audience. Now, I know in the beginning, you may be testing a couple audiences. I get it. There was a time, Grant, that I couldn't get the banking industry to leave me alone. They kept wanting to work with me, but it turned out that wasn't my industry. This wasn't. It was the utility industry. And once I doubled down the utility industry, I began to build a reputation that made me a legit speaker with my solutions. That's how you're going to go to the next level, when you have an audience that starts to embrace you. This is the other thing that you got to do, is you got to focus on prospecting. And a lot of times what folks will do is they'll let off the gas in the prospecting, especially when they start getting some gigs, right? Because that's exciting. It's actually more exciting for some just to do the gig, and less exciting to still do the prospecting. So you got to push down on the gas pedal, and you can't let up. You got to continue prospecting. In the beginning, all the money you make in the beginning, this is hard, but you can't eat your seed. That's what a mentor of mine told me once. Don't eat your seed, meaning that all the money you're getting has to go back into your business. And that's when you start building in assets. Like in the beginning, Grant, I made $30-some thousand without a website. I didn't have any of that stuff. And I took that money I made and reinvested it back in to get a website, to get a demo video. This is going to sound weird, but to actually get nice clothes so I can look better on stage. And so just taking that money and reinvesting it. Don't take that money and then put it in your personal checking account. Now you're going to go on vacation, stuff like that. That sounds silly, but people do it. You got to be disciplined and reinvest back in your business if you want to go to the next level. And then you've got to get intentional with the gigs that you get. And we teach us really good at the Speaker Lab. And that is, how do you create more gigs? How can you take a gig and use that as a platform to get the next gig? And so be very intentional with that. That's how you take it to the next level.
Yeah, I think one thing that you mentioned there was that focusing on the prospecting. I remember early on, I had a speaker friend tell me, you have to fall in love with the process. And like you mentioned, the part that we enjoy is, I just want to stand on stage. I just want to be there. Can someone else book me? I talked to a guy maybe a week ago or so who reached out. He's like, hey, I'm starting to book some stuff, and I heard about the Speaker Lab through a friend, and so I wanted to reach out. So we're kind of chatting for a second, and he's like, oh, wait, so you don't book me? I was like, no, that's like not what we do. We're not a bureau. We're not an agency. And like, that's and I did the same thing. And maybe you did the same thing, Eric, of going like, you're just desperately looking for someone else to do the heavy lifting. It's like, this morning I went to the gym. I don't enjoy going to the gym. It's not my favorite thing. And it's like, man, is there a way someone else can lift the weights, but I get the benefit? And like, it just doesn't work like that. And so falling in love with the process of going, I have to show up every single day, and I just have to do the work. So I'll give you a quick example of this. I'm living this right now with something that I've mentioned before on the podcast, is drumming. All right. I mentioned the drummer. Have you heard me talk about this? I don't know if you
I've
and
heard
I
you
talked.
talk about it. I
All
can't
right.
wait to
So
see the solo concert.
you see where this is going. All right. So, first of all, I was an aspiring drummer. Okay. And I was just like, drum sounds cool. I got my drum set. I started taking some lessons, and quickly I was like, okay, here we go. We are an amateur drummer, right? We're practicing. And well, I can tell you, fast forward here, like the shine has worn off to the point that oh dang, you got to actually do the work, right? And so I've not spent nearly enough time practicing like I should, because again, like the fun, the joy of just like, oh wait, this is hard. You got to keep doing the thing, and that's exactly the same thing that happens with speaking. Of just like you're desperately looking for the easy button, and yeah, there's things that we can do here at the Speaker Lab to help make it easier. But the bottom line is you still have to do the work. So
That's
you got to
awesome.
do the work building the speaking business. You got to do the work whether you want to learn to play drums. You got to do the work if you want to get in shape and lift heavy things. You got to do the work.
Side note, you look great. Going to the gym wears well on you. If you guys could see Grant right now, he looks super fit. He looks great. He's glowing. That's fantastic. And the other thing, drumming. What songs are you learning? What's the song right now you're working on?
I mean, there's a good channel on YouTube that I found that has a like
Are you a
a
rock
lot of
star drummer? What kind of
oh
drummer are
yeah,
you?
yeah, like they take a lot of like classic rock songs, they just simplify them down, and learning to read sheet music and follow along.
Oh
But
my gosh.
I digress. Okay, I'll do my performance at some point. But first of all, I got to get out of amateur drummer stage, and we got to go to the next stage, level three.
Well,
Level th-
let's talk about what
yeah.
to do to get out of. Oh, we did just talk about it. Never mind. Let's talk
We
about level
talked.
3. Sorry
We
about
talked
that.
about that. Yeah. We talked. Which, in fact, one other quick resource for you. Episode Eric and I recently did together. Episode 532. Episode 532. We talked about the 4 pillars of success to get booked and paid to speak in 90 days. So that's a great resource to help you get past this one. So in the first one, in aspiring, we talked about getting that first paid gig. I would say for this level, the amateur speaker is you have to learn how to get paid consistently and
Mm-hmm.
more than just one off here and there. But you got to know how. I know what I need to do to, if I put in X effort, I get Y result, and following that process. Third level is that professional speaker. And so this is a speaker that like, okay, you're starting to build some momentum. You're starting to get a little bit more predictability. You start to have the cash flow. You're even considering, or maybe you are quitting your day job, going all in and becoming a full-time speaker. So Eric, I'll elaborate a little bit more on this. We've talked a lot about on the show about you went through this yourself several years ago. I remember a conversation that we had of you're just like, am I ridiculous to think about quitting my job? Which I don't want to put words in your mouth. It seems like you quitting your job has been one of the best possible wins for you, for your family. So talk us through of like, what does it mean? What does it look like to be at that professional speaker level?
Oh, this is a great level. This is what I think when you start out on this journey, this is what you aspire for. You aspire to be at least have the opportunity. If you want to do it full time, you can. So I would say, first of all, Grant, it's a life-changing shift in your daily work life because now you have the ability, if you choose to go full time. And this is where I think my relationship with you solidified because you're forever now a part of a milestone of my life. And that was when I made the decision to go full time. I'll never forget it. I was thinking about going full time. I'd been coached to go full time. And I texted you and said, I should go full time. And you said, oh, dude, you can go full time. You've been able to do this for about a year. And I said, but I don't know if it's real. And you said, it's real. So it was your confidence that gave me the courage to do it. So I'm forever grateful for that. So that's life changing now because now you're thinking about, I don't have to worry about the day job if you've got that. I don't have to worry about all this hours I spent. I can focus just on my speaking business, which is exciting because
Yeah.
your days and weeks are totally focused now on building your speaking business. That's fun. And
Mm-hmm.
you've got a newfound freedom. And it's thrilling because now, Grant, you could become a full-time creative, which if you're a speaker, you obviously have a creative stint about you, a creative bent. This is where you can go all in now. And you know what's interesting is you'd experience extreme growth because what you've shed now this albatross that's been holding you back because you've been double minded. You had one thing you're doing over here, another thing you're doing over there. The best way it was explained to me when I was thinking about quitting was one of my mentors told me it's like standing on a pier with one leg and your other legs in the boat, which is your speaking business. In the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, you could do both, but after a while, your boat starts to pull away from the pier and you got to make a decision. Are you going to stand on the pier or stand in the boat? Well, here you decide to stand on the boat, right? So you have lots of travel. because you're now out there on stage. You've got huge momentum in your industry because your industry is now acknowledging you as a legit speaker. Now, Grant, what's fun about this is you're starting to field phone calls now. It's not just you always prospecting. Now people are contacting you. Hey, I heard you speak. Hey, you spoke at this last event. Someone said you'd be great here. That's really fun. This is an exciting time in your journey.
Now, the other part of this is you're trying to you're booking gigs consistently, but you're trying to like increase your speaking fees. You're trying to increase your the caliber of event that you're doing. You know, you start off by doing some smaller events here and there, which are fine. They pay the bills, and eventually it allows you to go full time. But you start seeing like, oh, there's this big national conference or international event, or here's this big marquee thing that I'd like to speak at, or I'd like to, I think I'm starting to share the stage with some other speakers that are a step or two ahead of me, and it's starting to give me a little bit of confidence there. And so, yeah, you're right that the wheels are starting to turn of what is possible. And so it's continually, again, doing the things that got you there, like we talked about in the previous level, of continuing to lay into the prospecting, being consistent with that, being diligent with that. That's something you talk religiously about with our students, and the importance of that in order to continue to grow and build the business. Now, again, just because you get to this level doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to stay at this level or move past this level. And so what are some of while it's exciting and fun, what are some of the like pitfalls, perhaps the glass ceilings that we start to run into here?
Yeah. So one of the things that's exciting about the business, but also becomes a huge, huge issue, is now you're full time, which means you got a lot of time now to work on your speaking business. And this is when you can get busy doing the wrong things and get distracted. And so focusing on the proper steps to maintain momentum is huge, and being very, very efficient with how you're spending your mental energy and where you're spending your time, that becomes really huge. And so a lot of times when I work with speakers, I actually like it when they don't have a lot of time, because that gives them a sense of urgency. So once you have more time, you got to be smart with that time. Part of that is never letting, and we talked about this earlier, but this is going to be very huge here, is you got to prospect, because what happens is you got a lot of cash flow coming in, you got a lot of gigs, and you can get so focused on delivering those contracts that you forget what got you there. And that is the prospecting. And so I'll see speakers that go 2 or 3 weeks without prospecting, and you can't do that. That's a death knell to your business. So you've got to continue doing that. The hard part too is managing your growth as a solopreneur. It's at this time you start actually feeling the real heaviness of your business, and that one person can't manage it. And you got to start thinking about, okay, how am I going to get past this? And you guys start thinking about human resources, right? This is the first time you probably start thinking about this. A lot of times you lose sight of the bigger picture because you're just focused so hard on building your business and the meat of it, the weeds of it, that you forget that in order to grow, you're going to have to learn to scale. And a lot of times people don't know how to do that yet. This is where we start seeing a really red flag for burnout, where you start people that they're crushing it, but they haven't been smart on how to build their business, and the business literally crushes them. It implodes on them. We see this all the time. And so in having discernment on what projects to take on, because in the beginning, you just take on anything, right, Grant? Yeah. If it comes your way, you're doing it. But now you got to be a little smarter. Not every opportunity is the right opportunity. You got to be smarter. And at this point, you got to start thinking about your finances and being smart about how to manage that on a daily operation, how you pay yourself, how that looks as you grow your speaking business. And the sad part about this phase is 50% of the people don't make it, right? Because of these things. So that's something you got to be really intentional about, so you don't become a statistic.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned there was kind of that law of sowing and reaping. And, especially early on, you're sowing a lot, you're planting a lot of seeds, and then you start reaping some of that. But if you don't continue to sow, then what happens is you fast forward a couple of months, it's like, dang, I was busy reaping, and I forgot to continue sowing. And now all of a sudden, like, I had this busy stretch, and now I've got 2 months with nothing. And at that point, it's not like you can book a gig for tomorrow. So it's no different than a farmer who's going, hey, I went to harvest and nothing's coming up. It's like, did you plant anything? You got to be planting stuff, weeks and months in advance in order for those seeds to be, turning into something that you can some type of crop or harvest. So how do we get past this level? What are the steps that we need to be taking? What are the things we need to be thinking about?
All right. Number one, you got to get coaching. What kind of coaching are you looking for? You need to work with someone that knows how to scale a business, because there is no such thing as status quo. You're either growing or you're not. And if you're not growing, that means you're probably going to eventually die off your businesses. That's how businesses fail. They don't grow, they lose cash flow. And so you got to scale your business, and you need someone to walk alongside you who knows how to do that. The next thing is you've got to start auditing your daily activities. And now it's time to contemplate, Grant, on bringing on your first team member. And there's a skill behind that, and you need coaching on that. So you need to start identifying, okay, what are some things I need to start getting off my plate that made sense early on, but now you have cash flow, you need to reinvest that and start bringing on team members. In fact, right now I've got 11 team members on my team. And then if I didn't have that, there was no way I would survive. You got to expand on your message, meaning that you got to think about your message, but what can you do with that now to create more speaking opportunities? You just can't be a one-trick pony. I'm great at this. Yeah, it's good. But now how can you take that and expand on that so it creates more opportunities with existing clients and also new clients, right? You got to maintain that consistent prospecting habit like we talked about, and begin to scale your message with other platforms. That's what scaling is all about. What can you do beyond just being a keynote presenter? By the way, fun fact, I talked to someone who's a part of the $1 Million Club at the NSA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a certain club. I'm not active in NSA, so I'm not going to dig deep into it, but I did talk to this person about it. And they told me that most of the people that are in the $1 Million Club have other platforms. They're not just keynoters, right? They're beyond that. So you got to think beyond that. And how can you take your message to other platforms and be coached on that?
Yeah, which leads really well into that fourth level there. So let's keep moving towards that. Number 4 is the career speaker, and so this would be someone who, you have sustained success. It's not a flash in the pan. It's not like I won American Idol and therefore I was on the speaking circuit for a couple of months or something. No, you've been doing this for a minute. You've got some more predictability in it. It's still like you have your ebbs and flows, your highs and lows, but like I know that I can make this work, and I know I can do this. And so these are those speakers that we would just identify as they've been at this for longer than 5 years, which, like you alluded to before, it can start to thin out because having some type of track record and longevity here requires a sustained effort. It's not just going to magically happen just because you listen to this podcast or any number of things. Like you got to continue to show up and do the work. So talk to us, Eric, about what is that career speaker? What does that lifestyle look like?
Oh, this is awesome. Yeah. Now you've done this for at least 5 years. You got a track record, and you're now on the other side of it where you're not in the 50-50 side anymore, which means you're starting to look at this as a career now. This is something that's going to be long-term. It's sustainable. So what does it look like, Grant? This is fantastic because now you've got security and cash flow. The reason why you made it beyond 5 years is you've got cash flow, which means you have a strong client base. You have a healthy amount of new prospects that are in your pipeline. So you got a mix of people that like to bring you in multiple times, and others that are willing to look at you because you've proven yourself. It's fantastic. Now, this is where I've been experiencing this a lot lately, Grant, and this is where I'm so grateful for you, is that the cash flow now goes beyond your basic living needs. In the beginning, you're just trying to pay the bills, right? That way you could make a living doing this. Now you got cash to do stuff. It looks like this. Hey, for example, I took my family to Italy. And we went for a week. And you know what, Grant? I didn't think about the price tag, and I paid cash for it. And it felt great, man. It felt great to know those times where maybe I missed a birthday, a time where maybe my family missed me because I was out on the stage doing this. It validated that when I could create this experience. And that's 2 years ago. Even to this day, my family talks about that vacation trip we took to Italy. And we take a lot of trips like that now. I'm at a point now where I can start thinking about, we started a family foundation and for charity. I never would have thought about that before. Now I can do that. We're talking about long-term investments. I'm thinking about working with my wealth management advisor on how my grandkids are going to live now. That's a fantastic place to be. And it's awesome to know that it's a speaking business that has allowed me to do that. At this point, you're now recognized as the premier expert in your industry, meaning that whenever they talk about an event, you're always the one or two speakers that it's always mentioned. Hey, what about Grant? Hey, did we think about Grant? Hey, I heard Grant's really good. You're at the top of mind at most events now, which is fantastic because you've worked hard to become and position yourself as the expert in the industry. Now you have the luxury of thinking long-term in your speaking business and plan for the future. What does it look like 10 years from now? And making this your primary vocation for the rest of your life. It's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, at this point, you're also starting to shift to think about more than just doing gigs. Especially in those early levels, you're just like, how do I get the next gig? How do I get the next gig? How do I get the next gig? And at this point, you're starting to go, I can only do so many gigs. I cannot do 365 gigs, nor is that healthy or sustainable. And so what are the things that I need to be thinking about and doing that will help me to generate revenue that doesn't necessarily require me to get on a plane every time? Like, I remember early on, I had a friend say, like, speaking is a high paying manual labor job. It's like a surgeon. A surgeon gets paid really really good money to do surgery, but the caveat is like you got to show up, you got to do surgery, you know. And so in the very same way with speaking is you have to start to think about what can I do to generate impact and income that scales beyond just I'm standing on a stage delivering a message. So what are some of the other obstacles that you see here, Eric, that speakers need to be thinking about and be aware of to overcome this level?
Yeah, well, I had a mentor of mine tell me this early on, Grant. And he said, in the beginning, you're just trying to determine between bad opportunities and good opportunities. He goes, when it gets hard is when you have to decide between good opportunities and great opportunities.
Yeah.
So you have to really become really smart on what you take on. Also, at this point, you start to get exposed a little bit more. The more success you have, and Speaker Lab has felt this, the more you're open to legal issues, unfortunately. And so you have to really start thinking legal stuff here. And that's when you start bringing in more legal advice. Whereas at the beginning, you didn't have to worry about that, but now you do. You got to start thinking about how do you trade? You don't want to trade time for money like you talked about. You got to start thinking about, hey, what's this look long term? Because I can't do this level forever. But I want my message to have an impact. How can I do that with not constantly having to fly out and do things? You got to start thinking about that. You got to find a balance between your speaking life and other areas of your life. Because in the beginning, you have to be out of balance to really get things up and running. But once you get up and running, your family, your personal life, your community deserve that you figure out, okay, what's this balance look like? You got to strike that balance. And so you also start looking at, now you've got team members, and at the beginning, you're just trying to solve problems with these team members. Now you got to start thinking about, okay, we got to build systems around this stuff because there's ways that other people are doing things. I don't know what this person's doing, but I just know they get it done. You got to start thinking about systematizing this, because now you're going to have team members start leaving that worked with you a while, and you got new team members, and how do you onboard them? And at this point, you start to see your growth kind of plateau a little bit. In the beginning, it's all growth, 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 growth. But now when you're trying to reset and find balance, your growth plateaus while you start to figure things out, and then how you can reset that and go to the next level.
Yeah, and again, going to the next level, like we've discussed, doesn't just magically happen. You know, there are plenty of speakers who may get to this point and decide, like, "Hey, I'm just going to stay here. This is what I want." Like, this is one of the fun things about, you know, the speaking industry just in general is, again, you get to decide the rules of the game in terms of what makes sense for you. So even as you're listening to this, you may hear like, "Hey, being at level 3, the professional speaker, like that's all I really ever aspired to," and that's totally fine. So you got to kind of be clear on what the goals are for you and what kind of game you're trying to play here. So if you wanted to get past the career speaker level, Eric, what are the things that we need to be thinking about, be aware of?
Okay, there's a few things. One is you need to get some coaching on this, and you need coaching on to help you decide on these growing opportunities and help you manage a growing team. So there's a skill set to here, and this is something you're really good at, Grant. And that's something I want to chat with you about actually in Dallas. Is you're really good about managing and growing a team, and so this is when you probably need to start thinking about a retainer on the legal side just to cover your bases here, because you don't want to destroy with the one wrong move everything you built. So you just got to clean this up. This is where you got to maybe audit what your team is doing and rebalancing that a little bit. I know the Speaker Lab has gone through many iterations of this. We have to rebalance your team a little bit to make sure that you got the right team members on and you got the right duties assigned. And then this is where actually I've been coached on this several times with really good speakers. If you think about the best speakers, they all have some kind of book that really takes them to another level. And actually, Mike Hyatt was the one that really taught me this, because, he came from the publishing industry. And he said something that really impacted me, and I remembered. He said, our society values authors at a high level, even more than like PhDs, right?
Yeah.
And master's degree. There's something about being a published author that just solidifies you as the expert. And so if you think about any speaker that you really admire, I guarantee it, they have some kind of book associated with it. So this is when if you haven't done it at this point, you really need to think about taking your signature message and publishing that to some degree. And that's going to elevate your business when you do that.
Yeah, a big part of that, to kind of piggyback on that is you're kind of diversifying in a variety of different ways, right? So for a lot of speakers, the primary mechanism of how they're delivering their content is typically through like a keynote. And so starting to think through, adding workshops or consulting or digital or a book, and it could be any number of things. But again, starting to think through ways that you can deliver your content that goes beyond just you standing on a stage here. So that leads us to the fifth and final level that we would describe and call the the legacy speaker. So this is a speaker that has developed a real business, much more than just kind of a high paying manual labor job, but it's a business. The impact really allows the speaker to not be on the road all the time, reduce the amount of time that they're on stage, and allows other people even to be involved with sharing a message that goes beyond just the one individual. So talk us through, like, how would you describe what this level looks like?
All right. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it based on my observations of you. Because, Grant, this is, I would say, you are epitome of the legacy speaker, someone I aspire to be. And so just watching your lifestyle, this is something that's motivated me. One of the things I notice about you, because you were a speaker and you've gone through all these levels, but now you're at this level. Here's what I've noticed about you is that the growth of your business doesn't solely depend on you anymore. What a beautiful thing. In fact, you're always saying this is not the Grant show. Right now, for me, it's the Erick Rheam show, right? And if I'm not out there speaking, my business isn't growing. And your business grows all the time, and you're not out there speaking all the time. You've brought a people on and you build a business that's gone beyond you, which is fantastic. So you scaled to the point that you don't have to physically be on stage if you choose not to be, which is a beautiful thing to be. Like for me, if I want to grow, I got to go on stage more. I got to raise my prices more. But you, at this point now, it doesn't physically mean you have to be on stage all the time. It means you scaled your business at a high level. I think what's cool about this level is you start thinking life beyond just speaking all the time. Because up to this point, you're just, how can I get on the next stage? How can I get on a bigger stage? Now you're starting to think about, well, what about beyond just that? How can I make my impact bigger, but it's not me anymore? And now you're starting to think beyond just your chosen industry. You can expand because in the beginning, you're really focused on an industry, but now you can grow. This is where you see speakers get beyond industries anymore. And that's actually a fool's errand for a lot of speakers in the beginning. They see like a Brene Brown or, these famous Tony Robbins, and they're like, ooh, that's who I want to be. Well, they didn't start out that way. They were really niche. And so this is when you can start thinking, okay, how can I bust out of my chosen industry and become a bigger than just that industry, which is a nice place to be. But Grant, since you are at this stage, how do you feel at this stage? What are some things you experience as a legacy speaker?
Yeah, I think like part of what gets you to each of these previous levels is some of it is just kind of brute force and sticking with it for an extended period of time, right? Like even like you just alluded to a Brene Brown or Tony Robbins. This isn't like an overnight thing, or you think that, oh, they did some, TEDx talk and they blew up magically. It's like, no, like they've spent significant amount of time behind the scenes for years or oftentimes decades before like we start to think of them being this overnight success. So some of it's just like this longevity of just like, they've just been doing it for a long period of time. But so you have that side of it, the longevity piece, the brute force piece, but then the other part that you kind of alluded to is that the business on a day-to-day and on a growing standpoint, like, doesn't depend on you. You have to really, really, really become way more dependent on other people, which can be difficult because you have largely been, as a speaker, real or perceived, you've been kind of the star of the show, and now all of a sudden you got to start shining the spotlight on other people, allowing them to do things, recognizing like you aren't great at everything. There are certain things that you may be really great at, but there's other things you just are not good at, and you got to allow other people to step in, recognize where your weaknesses are, recognize the kind of business that you want to be building, the direction that you're going, and making sure that you're hiring people, setting them up for success, giving them the right incentives, pointing them in the right direction, getting them fired up, and getting out of the way, which is really, really hard to do. And so I think this is where you start to think about building something bigger than yourself, building brand, building IP, and building something that goes and is more sustainable beyond just yourself here. So talk to us about also the obstacles that speakers can run into. I got one big one, but I want you to kick us off here.
All right. Well, I think one is finding balance between speaking on stage and growing other platforms, because at this point, what got you there is not going to take you to the next level. And so what got you there was getting on stage. And there's going to be a point where you're going to hit a tipping point there, and you got to start making some decisions, and you got to start finding that balance and growing in other platforms, exploring that. The other part is, when you start to do that, you also lose a little bit of that growth edge as a speaker, right? And you don't want to lose that momentum. So I think this is where coaching comes in, but you got to be smart on some of the shifting. I know you've been really intentional about this, Grant. You have people in your life. I know you go meet with a mastermind every year, and this is where you can bounce ideas and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, and you shift in a very intentional way. And then your team, as your team grows, this is where, and I've watched you manage this, and this is one of the reasons why I like being part of the Speaker Lab, because I learned by just watching you. And one of the things you've really been intentional about is you got to make sure that you don't lose the vision of what you started this whole thing, because the team could begin, and you can speak to this, can take on a personality of its own. And if you don't manage it, you can get off the vision of really what brought you here. And if you get off point and vision, that's when you can lose a little bit about what your brand's all about.
Yeah, one of the big things I see at this point as well is that the founder can really become the bottleneck. And like you said, you feel like you have to do everything. You're the one that's always done everything. And so starting to trust other people and get out of the way becomes really, really difficult. And so, like you said, even like in your shoes, you have 11 people, but you realize like you can't do 11 other jobs. And even if that's the case, one of the other things to clear this level is you have to start building a leadership team. You can't have 11 direct reports. That's just not healthy. That's not sustainable. And so, which means you have to start to promote people and build people up that they can be leading other teams that you're not involved in. They're making decisions that you're not a part of. And so that's really, really difficult, but it is, again, building that leadership team, getting out of the way, not becoming the bottleneck is one of the key parts here of clearing this level. Anything else that we need to be doing to get past this level?
Well, I would say that get coaching, like we talked about. And so you need a coach that's done this successfully. This is someone that can walk alongside you and you can bounce ideas off of and say, hey, in fact, I remember you brought in some of your coaches, Grant, to speak to the team. And it was interesting to see their mindset and how they coached you, which was fantastic. But I actually was on the other end of this. I remember for a small time, I was a part of your leadership team. I remember when I was part of your first iteration of a leadership team. And I remember one day you said, and this is hilarious, looking back on it, you said, all right, I'm going to go away for a couple of weeks. I'm going to go dark and see how you guys do. And I remember you thinking, I don't know how this is going to go. We may crash and burn. I don't know. And then we'll come back and we'll clean the mess up. Do you remember that? You remember doing that?
Yeah.
And I remember you just went dark for a few weeks, and it was up to leadership team to keep the Grant Baldwin business going and the vision going. And you came back and like, okay, are we still here? Let's talk this through. And so walk us through that. What was that like as you began to build your leadership team?
Yeah, at that point, I knew of a couple of friends who had done a sabbatical, and I knew that that was one thing I wanted to try, and less from a standpoint of, I think oftentimes we hear about sabbatical and we think, oh, someone's, stressed or burned out or fatigued or whatever it may be. And in this case, like, no, I felt good, but it was more of a stress test on the business. So if we truly want to say this is not the Grant show, then let's pull Grant out of the show and see what happens. And so, I took a month off where I was completely off the grid, and I was not on Slack. I did not attend a meeting. I didn't respond to emails, and I was just off. And it was more like, again, for the sake of the business, and in part, like, it was an empowering thing to the team. And since then, I've done that a couple more times. And I remember each time I've done it, I remember team members who've come back and said, wow, thank you so much for trusting us. Thank you so much for believing in us, for having the confidence in us that you can step away knowing that we got it. And felt like it's one thing for Grant to say it, it's another thing for him to actually do that. And that built such a confidence in, us and our teammates. So that was incredibly rewarding to be able to do something like that. So Erick, let me ask you this. Do you feel like as we look through these 5 levels, again, just kind of recap here, we've got the aspiring speaker, the amateur speaker, the professional speaker, the career speaker, and the legacy speaker. To kind of wrap up, do you feel like a speaker has to proceed through each of these to get to the next level?
I don't think it has to be clearly defined like this, but I think that just the general concept, I mean, you're going to go through these. You're going to go through the lack of clarity, trying to figure it out. You're going to go through, you don't have the consistency of booking gigs until you figure that out. And then once you figure that out, you're going to go through okay, I'm out of balance right now. I haven't been prospecting the way I have. And so I think every speaker is going to follow this general path. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be an aspiring speaker and check that off before you can become an amateur speaker, right? It's just knowing that along the way, there's certain obstacles you're going to need to clear. That's very common in order to get to the other side. And I would say, Grant, that it's a beautiful life that we have as speakers. And I never take it for granted the fact that I get paid to travel to a place and to get on stage and to do something that I love with a group of people that I enjoy being around. And it allows me to bless my family. And it's fun that when you do something that you're really passionate about and aligned with, it's an amazing how every other part of your life just starts to align once you figure out what that looks like. And it's a beautiful place to be. And it's been fun to be on this journey. And Grant, and it's also been fun to be on this journey with you. You've been a good friend and a good mentor. And anybody that is even thinking about being a speaker, do it, because I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. And do it with a coach.
And one other thing I would say is as you've been listening to this episode, go back and figure out where you are on this journey, on these different levels here. Where would you classify yourself? What are the steps that you need to take to proceed to that next level, if that's the next level that you want to get to? And I'm confident wherever you are, wherever you want to get to, we can help you here at the Speaker Lab. So, Erick, always enjoy the time. Thanks for sharing your insights, your wisdom with us as you've kind of navigated through each of these levels yourself. And it's always a lot of fun.
Thanks, Grant. Appreciate it. Fun hanging with you.